All right, we are on live now. Let me check it out. If we are really on live, and if you see us on live, um, where we are on Facebook, yes, I think we are getting there. And if you see us on live, um, and if you get to see us on live now, we are here on the Platinum platform. And if you do see us live on Facebook, it is live right now, but it's going to go on replay and in on various podcast platforms, podcast catches, um, on delayed replay, and you can go onto Spotify, Amazon. In the past, we've got Google Podcast that they took it off. Google took it off, and then but you can still find us on Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and I think at least 15 platforms in over 30 countries. And you are with us, Vicky Esther Chang, on the Platinum platform. And it is 2:15 p.m. What a wonderful day we have here. It is the 13th of May 2025, and we are almost half a year into 2025. Um, Myself, Vicky Esther Chen, your podcaster, a faithful podcaster from Singapore, and you've got there, you see that good, handsome looking young man over there, and that's Ralph Ave. Ralph, would you like to say a couple of words before we start onto the podcast? Where are you right now? What time? And who are you?
I'm in. First, my name is Ralph Awe, um, retired Chief Master Sergeant for the United States Air Force. Currently working for Department of Defense, and I'm in California, and it's about 11:22 p.m. Monday night.
Yeah, and a little bit about the podcast, State of Our World, Humanity for Better or for Worse. This is into its fourth year. And I'm so, but we have done a lot of, in fact, we have done five humanity summits throughout the last few years where, Ralph, you've been on. We have this humanity summit where we invite international guests all over the world to come in to talk to us about what keeps us up at night. And the final one that we had 2 years ago in December 2023, we talked about crossing the chasm, crossing whichever barriers or obstacles in life. And I think it was a good run because we had the National Library Board of Singapore supporting us. If you remember that, Ralph, the
Yeah,
International Humanities Summit that we had previously.
yeah, man. That's a while ago. That's, I do remember that though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a while ago, but it just felt like yesterday, right? And Ralph, I've known you for the last few years since the pandemic. It's always wonderful to have you. And ladies and gentlemen, you can always catch us below Facebook, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and all podcast catches, and of course, YouTube. And we are live now. Blink and you will be gone because the live will be taken off Facebook. And of course, the Facebook algorithm, the latest algorithm for Facebook, they will automatically take it away in 30 days. So it will be off anyway. The live um, cameras and the live recordings. Right. Ralph, today we've got very important topic. We are talking about the state of our world. Um, Humanity for better or for worse. And this is one of the conversations I will have with my mom. My mom has passed on about 10 years ago, but she's going to always say, like, the world is different. Now, you guys are like I don't know how I'm gonna like raise another child, or these are the conversations my mom will have. She's gonna say this is a difficult world because it's so hard to earn a living, and she sometimes when I take the cab, I talk to cab drivers because they are the people in the streets. They meet the people in the streets and have conversations. But I talk to cab drivers and I ask them how life it is right now as compared to like 10, 20 years ago. There are people who are running the streets, and I talk to them and ask them, how life is. Um, how things are different. Some of these old cab drivers that I talk to, is it harder to earn a living? And the conversations that I have with old people, they keep telling me, like my mom would say, Vicky, you've got to be more gracious. Stop that bargaining and stop their negotiation. Just give them the money. And life is hard. Life is tough. When you have a cab driver, I try not to not give a tip right now. I try to give a little tip. And when you have someone who delivers food, you've got this the conveniences of life. And when you go to a store, my mom would say, now stop bargaining, give them the money. These are some of the times that we're in. We try to squeeze as much as possible, but I'm just talking about a scenario. Some of the topics that we were talked about are, um, like yourself, a father. Is it harder to raise a child right now? You think? Um, is it harder to walk into a classroom? I do because um, I still walk into a classroom intermittently, even though I do a lot of web online classes. Um, what do we see right now? What do we see in ourselves? What do we see around us? Um, is in general values eroded? Do we see that, or and do we see violence increasing? Um, Different kinds of violence. Passive aggressive is a kind of violence. I mean, I do that a lot. Ralph, I do the passive aggressive a lot. People tell me, um, are we losing ourselves in these times? I think that's a big question. And I'm not sure if we can cover that in 38 minutes. Um, are we generally better off as human beings? I think that's a big question. I hope that Ralph, we can come back and talk about it. State of our world, humanity, are we better off or worse off? We don't want to just expound on the materials of life and the opportunities of life or the technologies of life, like the conveniences of life that we have right now. Conversations. I mean, I don't want that progress to be taken away, of course. But let's talk about the deeper things, Ralph. And we don't have to cry or shout over things. I mean, we can still smile over difficult topics, Ralph. Let's talk about, are we generally better off as human beings? But let's start expounding on this big topic. Um, Ralph, as an educator, as a human, and of course, in these kind of imagined conversations I have with Chat GPT, and conversations I have with my late mom, if she's still around, it will be over about, well, how times are different. Definitely, she's going to say how times are different, um, and how that life is more difficult now, times are different, or that it's so hard to raise a child now. For example, these are some kind of social conversations. Of course, we're not coming in as sociologists, a psychiatrist or psychologist to expound on these topics because they could go on. But I think it's important that as human beings, what do we see in ourselves? What do we see around us? I think we all have a stake in our civilization. Ralph, if we talk about the Roman civilization, or we talk about the civilization we're in now, 100 years later, we will be looking back and say, hey, that's kind of a social media civilization. I think we all have a stake in it, and we all have a say in this, the world that we are in, negative, positive, neutral. And I'd like to start on with my conversation with ChatGPT. Ralph, just to get us into the topic, there's something called the social good, and there's something called a social bad. In economic technical terms, social goods are things that we share free as human beings in a society. Free street lights, roads, defense, and some of the social goods that's coming on, like free technology and maybe the free AI that's coming on. So these are some of the social goods. Social media, social good, and there are some of social ills or slash social bads, um, drugs in the streets, violence in the streets, pollution, um, traffic jams, I mean, these are some of, or noise, right? Passive aggressive, being in the malls. So these are some of the social ills. Um, so these are some of the technical terms that we know through uh, studies. But I think as a human being, I would like to talk about some of the social goods, like the streaming platforms that we have, the technology, um, the social media that we share, the material conveniences, the ovens, the robot vacuum cleaners that I have, the washing machines, the hot water that comes through the tap. I think these are some of the social goods that we have that we take it for granted. But I want to talk about um, uh, some of these things that, of course, we take it for granted, but we're not. But I want to go a little bit deeper with you, Ralph, because I know you and I have such conversations in the past that goes deep, that I love and I enjoy. I'm on Instagram. Some of these social goods that comes with free entertainment, free comedy from YouTube and Instagram, and free education that I've got. I'm really concerned about some of these things that my mom and I would have conversations um, over with, like like for example, just to put us in this context, like people are just making money off taking off their clothes. Um, Not in a bad way, I think, for entertainment. Um, but I think if it gets over that this is probably shining the road to go or the way to go, like for example, things like OnlyFans, that gets me worried because I'm a woman. I'm a woman myself. We're entertaining other women, we're entertaining other men, we're entertaining other creatures. Um, I get really, really angry or even sad when people think that any woman would just like to make $1 million off social fans. And I think that kind of gets me angry. If people think that they could just get any woman on the street and then just ask them to peel off clothes and give them some money, what kind of message are we giving? That's something I would like to talk about today. And of course, I'd like to talk about violence versus values. Um, do I get into a classroom? Do I get into a group to think that it's easier to teach a group because I do see them thousands. I mean, in my career, I've got through youth that's gone through thousands of my hands because I go into a class about 30. In the past it was 40, 30, and you've got years and years of going through classes. You do meet thousands and thousands of youths, and the scene has changed. So today we're going to go into the topic values versus violence. Um, uh, and my first question to you, Ralph, in the backdrop that I talked about in the last 10 minutes, what's your take as a dad, as a father, as a mentor about the times we're living in now, um, the truths of the times, Ralph?
Oh, I think like when you brought up when a guy would pay money for a girl to take off her clothes, you got to think what kind of guy that is. Is that that's
Yeah.
creep, right? Why would he? go up and do that to somebody. And don't get me wrong, some girls will do it for money.
Yeah.
But again, that comes down to the values. So as a parent, as a father, I gotta instill those values into my kids. Like my son, he just got into was in a relationship, and I told him one rule was you never hit a woman. I don't care how pissed off you are, you never hit a woman, no matter what. You walk away. You know.
Mm.
And I tell but it's different with my daughter, right? Because I need her to
Don't
be
hit a man.
strong. Well, I need her to be strong. I need her to understand that um, this world's not easy. Adulting sucks. I told her just you're gonna realize what kind of bills you're gonna have when you get out there, and you're gonna realize how much we've been paying for you once you get on your own. So again, don't take what you have for granted. I told her enjoy your childhood because I never got to enjoy mine. I had to grow up real quick.
Mm.
That's why I try to have them do all these activities, let them be around other people, other coaches that can teach them stuff. Of course, I make sure they're good coaches, but at the same time, make sure we all have the same values. We all want the same thing for not just our child, but seeing the coach have the same goals for each and every kid, not just their kid. But
You know, and you're right because I'm just gonna throw you a question. Um, does does this environment that we're in make it harder for you? Because you are, every person, myself included. I'm not just saying the young person. It's not just the world that they live in. I mean, we are young people too ourselves, right? We get into such a dilemma. We get these temptations every day. Um, uh, does it become harder for you to like make your child um, get to the light instead of the darkness?
well, it's just you got to start them at a young age, instill those values. Um,
Mm,
you cannot, what do I say? You cannot design a child. Every
yeah.
kid's gonna have a different personality. I
Mm,
have three kids. We feed them the same, we raise them the same. They all have three different personalities. But the values has to be the same. We have to instill them. Um, I try to be the example, reading scripture and doing all that, and hopefully they're doing it. But
yeah.
um, is it harder? I'm
Mm,
sure it's generational, right? That 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even when I was younger, you still see all this bad stuff. You hear where I used to live, you used to hear gunshots. You used to see
mm,
cops have drug dealers right in front of them, and they just let them go. It's like, I'm not saying it was in the most dangerous environment, but that's the kind of stuff I saw growing up. And I turned out okay because I had the right mentors, and those mentors taught me to have good values, to keep on the straight and narrow, because going that route is just you're gonna find the end real quick. You go that route. So I try to tell my kids, just enjoy your childhood, do the right things. If you have a passion for something, I'll help you get there. I don't care what it is. I don't care if my son wants to be a ballerina or whatever. I'll go find somebody who can give you lessons.
be the best ballerina.
You know, I'll do whatever it takes for them to help reach their passions.
Mm,
But as long as
mm,
they work hard, that's the deal.
mm.
They have
That's a
to
deal.
show me that they want it. Because if
Correct.
they don't, then I have a real honest conversation with them. Is, am I wasting my money? You told me this was your passion. Am I
Mm,
wasting my money? So at the same time, I'll train them too because I grew up around basketball, so I'll teach them what I know and what I've learned, and then at times I'll send them to other coaches also because I don't want them to get jaded being coached by just one
mm,
person, by their own
mm.
dad, because you can learn from everybody, and that's what I believe in. And and I
Yeah,
think
and
that's why my daughter got still getting recruited. She's gonna play basketball at the next level at the college, and colleges are still reaching out to her, interested in her, but she already made a commitment. So, and my son,
yeah,
he's in the process of trying to figure out what he wants.
yeah.
Um, I think he's boys. They kind of figure out a little later what they really want. So
Yeah. And uh, you being a father, having these conversations with them. I do have conversations around my peers, conversations with some of these youths, even conversations between myself, within myself. Um, the values, we want to talk about the values. Um, I would think that my experience um, walking into a class, because I face youths of different age groups, also in the past and sometimes sporadically now. Um, I just want to reflect what's on the ground that I see. Number one, um, where I grew up, because I came from a traditional, old-fashioned value school. Well, I would say that it is a good school. One of the academically top school. I mean, Singapore's got this kind of rankings. They always rank like, how many people, how many students got the A's and the B's, the marks, and like you're gonna have this kind of rankings like the Billboard charts. I came from one of these my whole life, academically. I came from um, schools that were at the top. I'm still at the top. Um, and because my dad passed when I was about 7 or 8 of liver cancer. He smoked and he drank a lot. Um, we kind of attributed that was the reason that he got liver cancer. I think I grew up mature at a very young age, like kind of realizing things that you have to be who you are. You get to take care of yourself. You don't want to be a burden to your mom. You don't want to be a burden to your brother, to your sister, to your family. I mean, I think I do grow up being a good child, if I were to define it, if there isn't such a definition, but I would say that I grew up working really hard. Just as a side step, not to just blow my horns, um, blow my trumpet. I mean, I would study on my own, take up my books, and also study my dictionary when no one told me to. I really literally have my Oxford dictionary because we go for the Queen's English, where our education is British based. We've got the Queen's English. I get my Oxford dictionary is small, and I've got dictionaries that's really really huge. Those days we still have the paper and the pen.
yeah,
I do go from A, then to B, and then to C, and then I know it's going to take a long time, and then I go from the Z and then to the Y's the other way. I told myself that I got to work hard. I don't want to be a burden. And I think at that age, um, I kind of woke up. I kind of felt that I didn't want to be a burden. I don't want to be someone telling me, hey, Vicky, do your homework. So I would take out my books and I would complete my homework given by the teachers, which is a lot because we're talking about Singapore educational system, which I appreciate so much now. And there are like supplementary exercises. I would do them and I would check the answers on my own. I think these are the small stuff. Um, because I was put in a situation whereby I see my mother working. You start to feel that hey, it can be a tough life out there. You know, Take this away, Ralph. Take this away. I can't do this.
No, like you said, right? You worry about these kids and our society and what's around them now, all this violence and stuff.
Exactly. Like I go into a class right now. I mean, I was a teacher like 10, 20 years, and I go into a class right now. You can't even ask them to look up from their chair or from the table. You can't even have an eye contact with them anymore. They would be fidgety and they would not be not looking at you. Their mind would be their minds would be elsewhere. They would be talking back. You don't expect them to be like you, of course, but throughout the years, things are more challenging as you go into a class, um, because the basic respect is being taken away. um, and you don't have so much time to talk to them individually because you talk to them as a group, and you want to talk to them individually, but it's challenging. It's challenging because you can have a 5-minute conversation in the past and that wakes someone up with, oh teacher, I'm so sorry, and I won't do that again. But now it's like you take 5 hours and they still don't like get it, and you take 5 days. So I would say that in terms of quantitative time and quality time that you need to talk to someone becomes more challenging, because they are being molded by something else, because you are being challenged. Why you are being challenged? Your voice versus the media, the social media. Your voice is being taken away. Like teacher Vicky, why should I be studying um, uh, maths? Because I won't be doing maths in my life because I want to do this. You start having students wanting to challenge you, um, and you start having them not wanting to listen to you. And I'm not saying that we should be having these traditional classes whereby they should listen to you, but I'm saying that when you go into a formal situation, you do have to transmit knowledge, right? We're not their mothers or their fathers. But even when you go into a webinar, you get challenged. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but you don't get their attention anymore because their eyeballs are elsewhere. You can't talk to anyone anymore. So I would think that um, definitely for me, um, the bottom line is it gets really, really hard, right? It gets so hard, for me. It gets really, really hard, Ralph.
Well, the thing, if I like, I used to train foreign military here, right? Classroom setting. I was a instructor, and I would set the standard right away when I walk into the classroom. I would make the rules. I said, "Here's our breaks. Here's what we do. If you're engaged, we can have shorter classes. If we're not engaged, guess what? We're gonna take the whole day. Guess what? They're gonna participate real quick when they hear that because they get to go home early, right? Because we set the standard once we walk in the classroom, and it's the same thing like coaching too, right? The kids want to have fun. Okay, let's do all our drills, let's do all our exercises, and let's make sure we do our plays, and then we can go have fun. If you guys do all that, we'll have fun. If you guys don't, guess what? Practice is just gonna be all that.
Yeah.
It's on them. But I think a lot of times when adults worry about these youths or students not acting up, but not behaving a certain way that you want them to, for me, it's give them something that they'll be motivated by.
Yeah.
Some of these kids like to get out of class early. Okay, okay, if you're engaged and we get through everything for this day, guess what? I'll excuse you guys early.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
I love that, in classrooms, there are punishments and rewards. The tools have changed. They're so multifaceted right now, to gear them towards a particular discipline. You know, I want to talk about, like we are in competition. Now, for example, we talk about um, the values. How are we going to, like myself having these conversations with my mom, um, how are we going to have these values? I would call it the old-fashioned values, for example, and making it really stark. It would be, for example, like what we talked about earlier on, like social media or OnlyFans, where I'm being bombarded um, on the social media by, these girls, whom and whom have actually earned $1 million, or this PhD scientist, she says, oh, it's so hard being a scientist right now. And the money, it's so hard, it's so tough, and your work is not being appreciated. But I'm learning, I'm getting like $100,000 at the end of the month. And then it's growing. And then you talk about someone who's like earning $1 million, and you get someone who's telling you that they're earning $10 million. I feel it's a hard battle. You were talking about old-fashioned values, um, and what's out there. We can define it in any way. Money versus old-fashioned values. Do money come first, or money versus you peeling off your clothes, or you giving up? What's that? What's that bottom line? Where is that threshold? Um, where is that threshold? I don't know. And the thing is that we're having these conversations like state of our world. We don't have an. I mean, I don't have an answer, right? But I just want to reflect what's bothering me and what's troubling me. A couple of things like Ralph, we talked about this earlier on. Um, just to expound on it a little bit, um, there's a demand and there's a supply, right? Um, a girl taking off their clothes, and you see all this adult consent pornography. They say, okay, the adults are out there because they agree to it. Where is that threshold we're talking about? Um, um, I think a lot of people do feel that money is important. Um, it's important because I get that cash easier versus something that's harder. I think we're all fighting this battle right now. I mean, for me, an old-fashioned person, the old-fashioned values like working hard versus something easier, and getting the money. I'm just going to like break it down to something that's so tangible, like taking off your clothes and getting $1 million. Um, I think that's not really good. Rahul, I think that's not really good. I mean, to me, it's just the bottom line that that's bad. I don't want to like mince my words.
Well,
It's so hard to just be politically correct, right?
well, if you look at those girls, right? Yeah, they make all that money, and then what
Get the
happens to a lot of
house.
them?
I
They
don't know. I
they
don't
commit
know. I mean,
suicide. They get depression. They get anxiety. They get all this stuff because it's. I mean, was it worth it? Was their life worth doing that to get in that situation? I understand. It's but to me those girls, and there's some guys that do it too. Um, their value is money. They're it's the love for the money.
yeah, I just
It's
want
the root. That's the
exactly.
root.
And the thing is that, we're talking about supply and demand here. You're talking about some girls out there, trying because they are earning so much money on these whatever websites you call it. I would call it the dark websites. They're not the dark web, but to me they're in the dark. I know I don't want to be politically correct because this is not the mainstream media. It's my opinion. I don't think that's right. Um, that's from me. All right. I don't think that's right. I mean, girls, if you're listening out there, don't do that. I know it's gonna be contentious, but Vicky, I can get $1 million, or I'm getting the $100,000, but I'm just gonna say don't do that. Okay. Um, you've got girls trying to compete for eyeballs, trying to compete for their next $1 million because they can sleep with a man they're trying to break records, right? Um, 100 men per hour. I think you've seen that. And then you go to 1,000 men per hour because they earn that 20 million that fast. I mean, I think it's so sad. And I get so angry. Ralph, you are telling the world any woman would do that? What message are you telling the world? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to say, like, some people celebrate, oh, women, you are in control, you can get the man lined up. I'm just saying, girls, don't do that. What do you think, Ralph? I mean, have you seen that news that comes up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't pay no mind to. I mean, I hear it, but I don't look into it. I'm like, well, maybe they got issues. I don't know. Everybody got their own
The issue
issues.
is the money, right?
Well, maybe they got something more going on that than just the love for money. Um, that's
Mm,
what I think about it. I guess that's why I don't really focus on that stuff.
mm.
I just like you said, I focus on what's going on around my
So tell me
kids.
about the demand. Tell me about the demand.
Oh, the
I'm
demand
a man.
is all from these horny dudes, right? That want to see that stuff. And for me, it's like, whatever, you know. I mean, is temptation there? Always, temptation is always there. But
Yeah,
I think about my daughter. It's like I don't want her doing that. So
yeah,
I just try to instill to my daughter, like, you have a lot of value, and don't lose that, because I mean, you're on a good path here. You have opportunities that other kids don't get. So
yeah.
I
I
just
mean, you and I belong to that old-fashioned kind of. We hold on to the old-fashioned values a lot. Um, yeah, because I feel that we are fighting an uphill battle, Ralph. Me looking at news like that, that calls out. Um, that word we call it degradation of values that we call up in the Christian's word that's um, not only degradation or degrading that's that's the pith of life. I mean that's trash. And I think we're competing humanity, or civilization, not humanity, but that certain civilization. I mean, you've got that Greek. People are looking into the Greek history. You've got people who are doing orgies out there in the Greek history. People are just like having pleasures and all this. But I think we are heading towards something even really huge because the world, it's you've got this old-fashioned values versus the people who are thinking that I just want to be pragmatic. It could get me a better life because I could pay off the loan of my parents. I could get a car for my parents. I could get a house. So we are into this battle. Um, and it's so hard to put a finger onto these fights, Ralph. This is what I'm talking about.
oh, it's a spiritual battle going on, right? So that's what they're saying now. It's what do you call? They're saying
Yeah,
what? It's in the Bible. They're
yeah,
saying bad is good and now good is bad. Right? We're in those times now,
yeah,
and
and yeah,
yeah. But like I said, it's as long as we instill the values in them, we can't control what people are gonna
yeah,
do. I mean, it's
yeah,
unfortunate. You don't want them doing certain things, no matter. Some of them can come
yeah,
from good homes, and they still decide to do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You
And
can't control that.
and and because this is a big topic, um, we are over. We're almost like 40 minutes into this topic, but I think this opens up to any listeners or viewers out there. Come to us and tell us your view about is civilization on a whole, take away the materials, right? Take away the materials, but the civilization on a whole, are we into degradation? Um, are we going to such a state whereby we will never um, turn back? Um, so I think my job and your job today is to open up the conversation, and hopefully you can come back about civilization. Um, are we heading towards, to me, I really don't want to be politically correct. Take away the development, take away the progress. Are we going into self-destruction? I mean, these are the conversations I have with my mom. I mean, I don't mince my words. I'm just going to say, like, you know what? We're all heading towards self-destruction. Because not only values are taken away, violence is increasing, we're losing ourselves. I think generally people are disrespecting each other. We're getting angry, we're getting passive aggressive. Um, we're thinking about ourselves more, we're getting more self centered, we're getting more selfish. Um, People as a whole. So, and I hope that I'm wrong. So I invite viewers, listeners to come onto the show to give me your views, and also to have Ralph come back, if you could, to have your take on this. Am I too extremist in my view? Yeah.
I don't know. I think we talked about the OnlyFans things a little too long. I mean, we could talk about um, the music that kids are listening to nowadays. A lot of cuss words, a lot of violence in there, and
Tell
they're
me.
getting influenced by that.
Yeah.
And that's who's getting paid $1
They're
million too.
normalizing it, right? They're
Yeah,
normalizing it,
and they're
right?
getting paid a lot of money to go rap about that. And guess what? These kids want to follow that too. You know, and what are a lot of these other families of professional sports? You only have a handful, only less than 1% make it professional, but these parents are living through their kids for their dreams that they didn't get to have. And now that's putting a lot of pressure on those kids, and that can cause them to kind of stray away too. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of other things out there. But like I said, we just got to keep the values, instill the values, and that I was when my daughter, my sons, if they had bad games, I will not talk to them about that sport if they had a bad game until they want to bring it up. Because some parents will be like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I mean, they already feel crappy. Why am I going to add on to that? I'm not going to add on to that. When they're ready to talk to me about it and ask me, what could I have done better? Or, what should I have done? Then I'll tell them. But that's when they're ready to hear it. It's not right
Yeah,
after the game or right after their
yeah,
event,
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
and like social media, they're showing a lot of stuff that where people are making money and people are trying to do it and they fail. They don't realize it's like these successful YouTubers. It's consistency. It's every day they keep doing it and doing it and doing it. No matter they get 5 viewers, and all of a sudden they just blow up to get millions of viewers after that. But because they just kept at it, kept at it, kept at it. And I think that's what we got to teach our kids now. Just, not just hard work, but stay consistent. If you have a goal, stay consistent. And even if you're not seeing results, just keep going.
I hope that we can expound on this longer in the future, because I feel that we have to talk about um, values, and we have to talk about um, the civilization. Are we lowering the standard? Because you did talk about our standard that we want to set ourselves. Does it make it harder for standard setters? And also want to talk about, um, are we heading for this disgrace and downfall? I know it sounds really, really harsh, But I'm not. A lot of people say, "Oh, Vicky, you're too negative. You're too negative." Yeah, I think materially and development wise, we have become a person in totality. We have progressed and we have developed. Um, but I'm concerned about the unseen stuff. I'm concerned about the intangibles, and I think we do not talk deeper enough about these intangibles of lives, like, that's so close to my heart. Um, the values, the standard, where are we headed? Are we headed for this um, civilization value downfall? Of course, it's not going to be tomorrow, but are we slowly degrading ourselves? Are the seams being torn down? This is what I'm trying to say. Like you said about songs, but music, it's such a huge impact that we do not know music, the words that we read, the sounds that comes into our mind, it goes into a supplemental consciousness. And if you were saying about the raps and the cuss words, because they're normalizing these things.
Hmm.
If we start normalizing violence or violent words that goes into our mind, people do act upon them. Um, and they will say, and the people will just laugh and they will just laugh it off. Like, for example, a violent prank, things that we see online on YouTube, it's bad. You don't go and prank an old person and make them fall and break their leg and laugh it off and say, bye, it was just a prank. I think you know what I'm trying to say. But cuss words, yes. Um, and these are going to the social subliminal psyche. I think we need to talk about it. We can't talk about it too much. I hope that in some days, because we're into the 47th minute now, I hope we can talk about it sometime down before we wrap up the season of State of Our World. Humanity, are we better or worse? I hope that I can talk to you about the intangibles of life, of civilization. Not talk about development, not talk about technology, not talk about money, but talk about all these things that is coming and we are in competition with them, Ralph. Could we have these conversations again sometime?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I've always tried to give hope to
Yeah.
people I'm around. I struggle with some
Are
things
you in
too.
competition? You feel
Well,
that you're in
no,
competition?
I'm just admitting that I do struggle with, some of these like depression, anxiety, all that stuff.
Mm.
I'm not ashamed to say it, because of what military, has, what got me through. So
Yeah,
but luckily, um, they provide a service where I can actually go talk
yeah,
to somebody about it. So I still use that service
yeah.
because it helps me. Because I don't want to keep it all in. I need to tell somebody, and the VA provides that for me, which I'm really appreciative of. And so I'm
Yeah.
not this. Yeah, I try to be a light for these kids, give them hope, but I struggle myself. So
Yeah, I hope that we can come back, but at least what we did today is really to open conversations, and I don't want to be politically correct. My take is if we do ever come back before the season closes, because tonight, if ladies and gentlemen, you follow us, I'm going to have an AI and humanity a conversation with Alex Shan, and tomorrow we're going to have another conversation with Vince Michael from Canada. He's going to talk about social media and the misinformation online and how it affects people. I think the conversation has to go on because we're now into this digital universe. We don't even talk about that enough. We don't talk about enough about our competition, the uphill battle and the universe that we are now thrown into. And like what you say, the music, um, the visuals that's going into the psyche, the sounds that's coming on. I really, really am concerned. Um, you know, um, we have to have this kind of guardrails. We have to have this kind of conversations. We have to have this. awareness, I should say, that we may not be the people to provide the solution. I don't think we are the providers of the solution, but at least I think we start the conversation about some of this risk out there and have an awareness. My take is that we are the state of our world, civilization, humanity. Are we better off or worse? I would say that the intangibles of humanity, which is so much more important than the tangibles of humanity, um, I think we are in a greater risk. We are in greater risk. Um, I think we are headed towards um, people that's more selfish, self-centered, material minded. Not that it's bad, I always say that, let's have someone just be politically um, not correct. I don't mind saying that. We were really headed towards the values degradation. We are just like being torn at the seams. So I hope that sometime down the line we can talk more. Ralph, would you like to wrap this up in 30 seconds?
Yeah, just thanks for always having me, and thanks for always inviting me with your projects and all that. I really appreciate that. Uh, I don't know how much value I bring, but I do appreciate you uh, believing in me, and sometimes that's all it takes.
I do. I think people do need to value conversations like this, and I do value your presence definitely. Because I do know you as a person. People, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, listeners, please go down and listen to my podcast with Ralph Ave and the numerous episodes we have about his life in the military in the YouTube for the last years or so. We need to have conversations like this, and I value this because we don't talk about these topics enough. Enough. Um, we want to talk about that uphill battle, and I don't want to say that it's easy. We have to say it as it is. I don't think it's right to permeate the thinking that it's okay to strip and get $1 million. I don't think it's okay to have cuss words in music and normalize that, and have violent words to normalize that. I don't think it's okay to normalize these stuff or violence in the street, and hitting out on your friend and say that, hey, you know, catch me if you can. I don't think it's right. And I think someone has got to be honest about it. And I think with you, we can have a conversation that is not, we don't mince our words. I mean, I hope that I don't mince my words here. Sometimes I do become socially and politically correct. Sometimes we have to. But when it comes to that bottom line, and they're reaching that threshold, someone has got to say something. I don't think it's right to like, um, uh, 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 to have sexual intercourse with 100 men in an hour and have the competition. And then now is up to like 1,000 men in an hour, and that kind of breaks the record. I don't like that. I don't like that. What are you sending out to the world as a woman? And I'm really, really mad and angry at that. And I hope I'm allowed to say that, Ralph. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the conversations we had yesterday and today. And we've got people coming in and out of Facebook. Thank you for being here. And I invite you, the viewers and the listeners, to come onto the show to tell me what you think about some of these topics and more topics. And we are enlarging it, of course. Today we're just framing about music, about what you see online, OnlyFans, etc. That's just the start of a conversation, and it's not going to end there. Thank you so much, Ralph. I totally, totally appreciate you being such a listener, because I know I'm dominating the conversation. I don't think I would like to, but I think we should. Someone should really acknowledge what's going on. And I
Absolutely.
appreciate Ralph, you being there. And I'm signing off here, 54 minutes into the podcast of values and violence. We haven't talked about violence amongst us yet. I hope that we can come back, but definitely we talked about values a lot today. Thank you, Ralph. Signing off from Singapore, Ralph.
All right. Thank you, Vicky. Signing off from California.
Yeah, I hope you come back before the season ends. Right. Thank you. I'm inviting everyone. Bye. It doesn't end here. It starts from here.